How do I enter the space of public policy? What skills do employers look actually for? Is policy writing something anyone can learn? Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode on Conversations with Diplomats and Bureaucrats, the official program of the Policy Tank with me, Pranav Sharma, founder and CEO to the Policy Tank. One question we hear almost every day: how do I enter the space of public policy? What skills do employers look actually for? Is policy writing something anyone can learn? And to help answer these questions, we are privileged to have with us someone who has spent decades contributing to policy making at the highest level of the government of India. The person have served as a former diplomat, retired Joint Secretary with Government of India, and has been working in the capacity of strategic and security expert and also international relations expert with MEA. I would like to introduce none other than Mr. Bhargav Mitra, sir. Welcome, sir, in the conversation with us. Would love to hear from you as well, sir. It has been an honor to have you.
Thank you, Pranabji, for the very kind introduction. I think you have summed it up quite well, and I think such conversations will always go a long way to guide our students and professionals, because the experience that people have is always good to impart. And as you rightly mentioned, the theme of public policy and policy writing is very critical. So I will straight away attempt this topic and make it very simple for you to understand. And I'll be kind of mixing up my English with a bit of Hindi also, so that it is easily discernible, understandable.
So, before we start or before we talk about careers, I would love to begin with your own journey. What inspired you to join public service, and what has kept you motivated throughout your journey in policy making?
Well, when I joined the government, it was always some kind of policy making which kept on happening. And I believe that policy making is something which is present in our daily lives. And every time we handle something, we have a policy making, whether we work at home. And I would say, when you are at home, so the first place where policy is made is your home. Like, there are certain rules set that you come back home by 6 o'clock, do not stay for too long in the night, be safe. Now, these are the policy guidelines given by your parents. Now, you start following policy right from your childhood. This policy is not written. This is verbal
That's
policy.
true, sir.
That's verbal policy. But it's policy. Policy is laying down of guidelines, rules, regulations. So when we are in the family, we talk about do's and don'ts. When we are in the system, whether in the government or in corporate, we talk about guidelines, policy. So policy is something which is present in our daily lives, number one. And when you talk about the policy writing part, every policy has to be structured, clear, which has very distinct rules, objectives, responsibilities, procedures. And these things are aimed at achieving a specific goal. Unless you have a goal, you cannot structure the policy.
That's true, sir.
Unless you structure a policy well, you cannot achieve a goal. So they are interdisciplinary, they are interdependent factors. And whenever you have to take a decision in life, you always make a policy in your mind. From the childhood, from the college days, student days, school days, you have a decision making to do. In your mind, you think about policy. You actually work it in your mind. So it is not something which will come only after you start doing a job, or you are in a college or school at a higher level. It is part of our normal existence. And every policy needs to have consistency of approach. If your policy is not consistent, then it will not be implementable. तो एक पॉलिसी इंप्लीमेंट कैसे होती है? जब उसके सारे कंपोनेंट जो हैं वो ठीक से अपनी जगह पे जब सेट होते हैं, तभी एक पॉलिसी होती है जो कि ऑपरेट करती है, तभी वो पॉलिसी है जो कि फीजिबल है,
जी
तभी वो पॉलिसी इम्प्लीमेंटेबल है, वरना वो पेपर पे है। नाउ
ओके
यदि
सर
कोई पॉलिसी पेपर पे रह गई तो इट्स नॉट ए पॉलिसी, बिकॉज इट यू कांट इम्प्लीमेंट इट, यू डोंट इवन नो कि हाउ डू इम्प्लीमेंट दैट पॉलिसी अनलेस you write it in a manner or you present it in a manner which can be duplicated, replicated by your listener, by somebody who is going to write that kind of a policy. So I think, कई बार पॉलिसी के बारे में, पॉलिसी मेकिंग, पॉलिसी राइटिंग, पॉलिसी कंसेप्शन, इसके बारे में हमारी जो सोच है वो बहुत डीप हो जाती है।
जी सर
तो मैं ऑलवेज कहता हूं कि पॉलिसी मेकिंग बहुत आसान काम, इसमें कोई मुश्किल चीज नहीं है। आप जो सोचते हो ना, वो पॉलिसी है।
जी सर
जो आप उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करते हो वो पॉलिसी रेगुलेशन है। आपको देखना है कि आपकी पॉलिसी कहाँ फिट हो रही है, कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या है। क्या आप एक कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर की पॉलिसी गवर्नमेंट में लगाओगे तो ओवरलैपिंग हो जाएगा, वहां पे काम नहीं करेगा। गवर्नमेंट का काम का तरीका अलग है, कॉर्पोरेट का तरीका अलग है। लेकिन कुछ चीजें जो हैं दे आर कॉमन इन गवर्नमेंट एंड कॉर्पोरेट, बोथ दोज ट्रेड्स। Those traits are related to a sound policy making. A company's policies are going to be implemented. So how they are implemented, unless they are framed well,
जी सर
framed in simple language, put out in a manner that are understood by everybody. Now, policy matter ऐसा है कि इसमें यदि आपको समझ ही नहीं आया कि करना क्या है, पॉलिसी बना क्यों रहे हैं? पॉलिसी
तो
बना रहे हैं बिकॉज उस पॉलिसी को कोई ना कोई समझ के उसको फॉलो करेंगे।
जी
तो इसीलिए पॉलिसी मेकिंग बहुत आसान काम है, लेकिन इतना भी आसान नहीं है। बट मैं उस मानता हूं कि इफ यू रियली आर सीरियस अबाउट इट, देन यू शुड बी very clear cut about what exactly do you plan to achieve through policy making. That's very important. So I think briefly I can start off with this, and then further questions when they come, then we can talk
exactly
about it.
sir. And I think so that's a wonderful starting point as well because every career has a beginning and our viewers can also learn a lot from hearing about your thoughts because as you mentioned that policy starts from household. A lot of people don't understand that and lack that sentiments of understanding that policy or developing that policy thinking. So many students hear terms like policy research, policy analysis, and policy writing, but they often don't know what they actually mean. In simple words, if I say, then how would you explain policy writing to someone who is completely new to this field?
Well, whatever, suppose you talk about the problem of road safety.
Yes, sir.
Now, road safety is a problem which touches our lives every day. How do you want to make somebody aware of the importance of road safety and the dangers of not following road safety regulations? So first of all, you need to have a clear roadmap for understanding what is road safety. Because if you do not follow road safety yourself, you'll never be able to make a good policy. It's for sure. So you need to be disciplined, first of all, yourself. That you have to drive like this. You have to follow traffic signals. You have to, when you turn, you would take a look at the uh, pedestrians. So what you do is that you have a clear course of action in front of you. That well, I want to write a policy on this, so I need to be clear about what exactly is at stake. How we plan? How are we affected by the wrong management of safety rules? If we are violating safety rules, what will be done? Why safety is important? Policy will tell you why safety is important. You have to ask yourself. So Once you have able to identify why road safety is important, suppose I'm just giving an example, then you go down to a situation where you start to address this issue in a very careful and competent manner without being ambiguous or uncertain. You have to be very clear. Policy writing is something which actually is based on clarity. Now, clarity is something which comes from your mind. Clarity is something which cannot be always taught. It comes from within. That how do you want to address a particular system, a subject? So, in my view, now if you are thinking about the community, if you are thinking about the people, then I think you will be writing a policy paper on road safety with compassion,
Yes, sir.
carefulness. You'll be setting a few goals for yourself, for the people who read your policy paper. You have to anticipate challenges and
Ji.
respond to those challenges in an effective manner so that it is clear to everybody who is reading your paper that what is at stake as far as this issue is concerned. So I think this issue, this clarity is something which is a very, very important part of this entire thing.
No, so, thank you for the very beautiful explanation on that. And I feel because लोग इसी चीज को कनेक्ट नहीं कर पाते हैं अपने डे टू डे लाइफ से भी when I also keep taking these sessions with the students on public policy, so they struggle, okay, because what I feel is that नाम सुन के डर जाते हैं policy writing and policy formulation. But I'm also having one follow up question with you. So are internships, research projects, and practical exposure becoming as important as academic qualifications in today's time?
Well, I'll answer your first question first and then I'll come down to this. आप जब भी अच्छी पॉलिसी बनाए ना, सोचे आपकी अच्छी पॉलिसी आपको बनानी है तो आप अपने बारे में एक पॉलिसी बनाए. Your own life, your own attitude, your own discipline, the way you are talking to yourself, way you are actually trying to charter your course, chart out your course. एक 2 पेज का 3 पेज का पॉलिसी पेपर बनाए अपने ऊपर, कीपिंग योर ओन सेल्फ इन माइंड, एंड देन यू मैच इट विथ व्हाट यू आर. बिकॉज आप जब पॉलिसी पेपर बनाते हैं तो यू ऑलवेज मेक इट फॉर समबडी एल्स. आप चाहते हैं कि वो आदमी आपके पॉलिसी पेपर को पढ़ के उसको फॉलो करे, भले ही आप अपने पॉलिसी पेपर को खुद ही नहीं फॉलो कर रहे हैं. Now there's a dichotomy here.
That's
It's a
true, sir.
contradiction.
True.
यदि आप अपने पॉलिसी पेपर को खुद भी नहीं फॉलो कर रहे हैं तो आई डोंट थिंक यू आर राइटिंग अ पॉलिसी. यू हैव नो राइट टू टेल समबडी कि ऐसा होना चाहिए. यदि आप पॉलिसी के थ्रू से बताते हैं कि ऐसा होना चाहिए, इस तरीके की चीज होनी चाहिए, मैंने स्वच्छ भारत अभियान है सपोज, टेक एन एग्जाम्पल.
Sir.
वही पॉलिसी पर बना, उस पर गवर्नमेंट ने बनाया कि स्वच्छता बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, बट आपने पॉलिसी बना तो दी और आप अपने घर का कूड़ा अपने घर के ठीक बाहर फेंकते हो पड़ोसी के घर के सामने. एंड यू हैव ड्राफ्टेड स्वच्छता अभियान पॉलिसी फॉर द गवर्नमेंट एंड फॉर होल ऑफ इंडिया टू फॉलो. आर यू डूइंग जस्टिस टू योर ओन वर्क? नो. बिकॉज होता क्या है कि जब आप पॉलिसी बना के किसी को देते हो तो आप उस पॉलिसी से दूर हट जाते हो. In your own life, that policy doesn't matter to you because you know it's always prescriptive.
True,
डॉक्टर के
sir.
पास जाते हैं, डॉक्टर ने प्रिस्क्रिप्शन लिख दी, आपने दवा खा ली और आपका दवा बीमारी ठीक हो रहा है नहीं ठीक हो रहा है. पॉलिसी वैसी चीज है कि आपने एक पॉलिसी पेपर बना दिया एंड यू एक्सपेक्ट अदर्स टू फॉलो इट. इफ दे डोंट फॉलो इट, मेरा क्या है, मैंने पॉलिसी बना दी, बट देन you make a policy which is implementable.
True,
And
sir.
the second part of the question, which when you talked about the internship, and I think you probably
Yes, sir.
asked
Internships
about.
and research projects, sir.
uh,
Internships, research projects, and how they giving the getting the practical exposure.
See, when you internship is a good place to start. Internship actually gives you a very brief idea about a place, about an entity, about an organization. But public policy writing is psychological also.
True,
You
sir.
know, it is not something which will come to everybody. It's not an easy job. You have to be sensitive. When you learn something as an intern,
Ji.
then you should learn what is there for you to adapt in your normal life.
जी,
What are you learning? As an intern, what are you learning? What tenets of public policy you are learning? First of all, public policy has to be clear, and only then public policy writing will come. It is not that you write first and think later. You think first, write later. So first
जी,
of all, you have to have a concept in mind, key what I am writing. So as an intern, you have the basic knowledge.
जी सर,
Then when you have that basic knowledge, you translate that into a research-oriented work.
जी,
But then if you are doing research in public policy and you are writing out a paper, then it comes with social responsibility. Every public policy writing comes with social responsibility.
true,
You are actually telling the society about what should be done, how it should be done. So there are public policy documents on which a country's policy is established. Now, if you have a foreign policy related public policy writing, so if you talk about the prime minister acting on a particular suggestion of foreign policy, then the concerned Ministry of External Affairs makes a concept paper, which is a kind of policy paper. That is what the think tanks also do. They also write policy papers. What do they write in that policy paper? They write about the ways that India's relations with Bangladesh are to be conducted. There's a public policy paper on that. Now, what are the inclusions there? How it should be addressed? What are the bilateral relations? Where it is going wrong? Where it is going right? Why we should get into this? Is it affecting us in some way? Is current day Bangladesh under some kind of internal pressure or external pressure? Is it with India or against India? Is there a religious fundamentalism there? So there are so many aspects of when you start thinking about a foreign policy document or public policy. Similarly, as I mentioned, Swachhata Abhiyan.
जी,
Similarly, you have got so many other examples of public policy documents. So research, yes, research is
yes,
very important. And when you start writing about it, you think about how this policy is going to affect or impact individual lives.
जी सर,
So I think there is no policy which should be away from dealing with individual lives. So you have Digital India, you've got Ayushman Bharat, you've got National Solar Mission. Now these are all policy papers
true sir,
which are being implemented today. So it has a
true,
social aspect also. It's a beneficial aspect also. It's a welfare oriented also. So policy making, as I said, policy writing, a lot of psychology involved.
sir. Also, one more leading question to it. Let's say, as you talked about research, so I would also like to know that how is a policy document different from a research paper or an academic assignment?
Yes, it is different. See, when you do research on a particular topic. There is always a topic. When you talk about the policy document, then you are thinking about a much larger. See, research paper is not binding on anybody. Through the research paper, you are not making it an important document to be implemented on the ground. But every policy paper, the objective behind a policy paper is to implement it on the ground. If there is no implementation of a public policy paper or policy paper, it is not a policy paper. You are actually making it for people to follow it, understand it, learn from it, implement it, benefit from it. So, as I cited example of foreign policy paper. Now, if you do not implement it when you formulate your foreign policy vis-a-vis support Bangladesh or Pakistan or United States of America, then what is the advantage of the policy paper? If these five, six policy papers which I have just mentioned to you,
जी
if
सर,
Ayushman Bharat, if Swachhata Bharat,
जी,
Swachhata, if you don't implement it, the policy paper is a piece of paper.
जी सर,
It is of no use to anybody. So the government or the corporate sector, when the corporate sector also, when it works out, now when a company works out its policies,
yes sir,
puts out as a concept paper to be followed by all the employees, you are making a public policy paper. You are
जी,
circulating it among the people that you have employed. You expect them to observe it.
जी
उसका पालन करना चाहिए। पॉलिसी पेपर बना के लाइब्रेरी में रखने वाली बात नहीं है। पॉलिसी पेपर बनता इसलिए है कि उसके रूल्स रेगुलेशंस आदमी उसको फॉलो करे। आप कंपनी में है तो कंपनी के रेगुलेशंस है, उसकी पॉलिसी है, उसकी ये पॉलिसी है, उसकी वो पॉलिसी है। कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं होना चाहिए, ये नहीं होना चाहिए। दीज आर ऑल पॉलिसी थिंग्स which are put out
super.
for people to understand. Now, the leadership of a corporate sector company will expect you to understand and follow it. You are given opportunity to read it, understand it. कई बार आप कहीं इंपॉर्टेंट जगह पे जाते हैं, कहीं सिक्योरिटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, तो आपको सिक्योरिटी रिलेटेड इंस्ट्रक्शंस पढ़ने थी। यू आर सेंसिटाइज टू सिक्योरिटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। क्यों
True.
पढ़ने दिया जाता है? क्योंकि वो पॉलिसी है। वहां पे आपको बताया जाता है कि डूज एंड डोंट्स क्या है ऑफ सिक्योरिटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। वहां आपको ये भी बताया जाता है कि साइबर की पॉलिसी क्या।
जी
साइबर की पॉलिसी बहुत स्ट्रिक्ट होती है, उसमें
बस
काफी पॉइंट्स लिखे होते हैं। हाँ, हम लोग जो करते हैं कई बार हम बहुत केयरलेस हो जाते हैं। तो पॉलिसी बताता है कि ये चीज करना है, ये चीज नहीं करना है।
नहीं करना है। True.
यदि प्रॉब्लम हो तो उसको कैसे निकालना है।
जी
बट जो चीज एडवाइजेबल नहीं है वो नहीं करना। पॉलिसी ये भी बताती है कि डूज नहीं भी बताती है, पॉलिसी बताती है कि डोंट्स भी क्या है। और
जी
कई
जी
बार यदि डूज आपको दिखता है तो ऑटोमेटिकली डोंट्स भी दिख जाते हैं। यदि कुछ
True.
करना है तो पता चला था कि क्या नहीं करना है। उसके लिए बार बार हर चीज लिखने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती है। इसीलिए जो अच्छे पॉलिसी मेकर्स होते हैं दे कीप द पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट ब्रीफ,
Yes.
वॉल्यूमिनस नहीं कभी भी। कोई
जी
पॉलिसी पेपर ऐसे ना बनाए जो कि वॉल्यूमिनस हो, पढ़ने में दिक्कत हो, समझ में दिक्कत हो, लैंग्वेज की प्रॉब्लम हो। और सिंप्लिसिटी ऑफ लैंग्वेज बहुत क्रिटिकल है। आप एक सिचुएशन को समझाते हैं ना किसी को, तो
ट्रू सर।
उसको उसके दिमाग में बात घुस जानी चाहिए एक बार।
जी
यदि उसको समझ में नहीं आए पढ़ के पॉलिसी पेपर, तो पॉलिसी पेपर का फेलियर है। जैसे कि नॉर्मल लैंग्वेज में भी हम लोग कहते हैं कि राइट सिंपल इंग्लिश और राइट सिंपल वर्ड, so that people are able to comprehend, understand. Only when they comprehend, understand, then they will follow. But you also make it very clear through a policy paper that why it should be followed, because it is part of the process. It is part of the system. You cannot stay in a place if you don't follow the policy. You'll be thrown out the next day.
दैट्स ट्रू।
So, इसलिए it cuts both ways.
But sir, I'll pick up few points over here what you also told. So I also remember this conversation which I had with the then PMO advisor, like economic advisor to PMO, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. So he actually very rightly pointed out on this particular aspect of that while having this conversation with his students, that whatever research papers these students write these days, so they are not of use for the government, or not are useful for the policy making. So if you are writing, so what he meant was that if you're writing, don't just write for the sake of writing. You write it so that by identifying the problems, and what that is also what I feel is, when we talk about the policy cycle, that problem of identifying the problem or problem identification is the very first step for that, which a lot of people and students lack uh, during their write while they write these research papers, whether it is for any subject. And the second thing is what you also rightly mentioned, that language should be very simple and very easy to understand. But what trend is going on in today's times is that these students or the people tends to use a lot of jargons to make it more fancy, but they don't understand this, that okay, government or any international organization also does not want or do not want the very fancy language. Just a very simple documentation they need to so that people can understand it a bit more, so that we can increase the people's participation written to the formal policy making.
The purpose of any writing, not only policy paper writing,
Yes sir.
the objective behind is to be understood. If you are unable to make yourself understood, you have failed.
True.
That may be because of language, that may be because of presentation,
True sir.
that may be because of lack of research, Research these days, or generally, unless it is extremely solid, original research, how many research papers are there which are original? Now there is so much available on the internet. There's so much available on Chat GPT. You can make a research paper based on what Chat GPT tells you. But that is where the issue of plagiarism comes in, that you lift
Yes,
something
sir.
from somewhere and you put it into a research paper. Ultimately, those who are reading it, serious guys, they know that it's a lifted stuff. Now, you are not doing any favor to anybody by doing all this. So you are not being original. Your thoughts are not original. And if somebody is unable to understand, I'm repeating myself, what exactly is written in your paper, he or she will lose interest in it. That is where the jargon thing comes. Nobody
That's
is interested to know how much you know.
true.
Everybody is interested to know what they should know.
Hmm.
आपका ज्ञान कितना है उससे किसी को मतलब नहीं। आप बहुत बड़े ज्ञानी हो सकते हैं, बट आप
जी,
बहुत पुअर पॉलिसी राइटर्स हैं। आपका ज्ञान जो है वो प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है।
जी,
तो जब प्रैक्टिकल नहीं होगा तो पब्लिक पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं बन सकती। सपोज आपने आयुष्मान भारत का पब्लिक पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट बनाया, इम्प्लीमेंट ही नहीं कर पा रहे आप उस पर जार्गन ही जार्गन भरे हुए। सपोज आम आदमी के लाइफ को कैसे टच करता है आयुष्मान भारत, उसका वो उसमें आप यदि पढ़ेंगे तो उस डॉक्यूमेंट पे लिखा हुआ है कि हाउ इट इज गोइंग टू रीच एवरीबडी, इवन डाउन टू द पुअरेस्ट। हाउ विल इट अपील टू एनीवन, and how many people actually read the policy papers? They look at the solution. If your policy paper does not provide a solution, then again it's a failure.
it's
पढ़
true.
के पढ़ने के बाद लगा कि यार ये बंदा वो जैसे वो थ्री इडियट्स में वो उसे डायलॉग था कि ये कहना क्या चाहते हैं। आमिर खान
True,
को बोला
sir.
था ना कि कहना क्या चाहते हैं।
जी,
तो यदि पढ़ने के बाद यही सवाल वो पूछे रीडर की, यार कहना क्या चाहते हैं, मतलब इट्स अ वेरी सीरियस एक्यूजेशन
true,
कि
sir.
आपने ऐसी बात लिखी है कि उसके पल्ले नहीं पड़ रहा है। इट इज ऑफ नो यूज टू हिम। एट द मोमेंट इट इज ऑफ नो यूज टू हिम, उसको छोड़ देगा कि यार मुझे इसका मतलब ही नहीं है, तो पता नहीं क्या लिख रहा है बंदा। आपको अंग्रेजी लिखनी है तो आप शेक्सपियर पे रिसर्च करो, वहां आप जर्गन लिखो ना, कोई
True,
दिक्कत
sir.
नहीं है। बट इसमें ना लिखो, आप इसमें सिंपल बताओ कि आप सोल्यूशन दे पा रहे हो, प्रॉब्लम को एड्रेस कर पा रहे हैं आप। हर पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट जो है वो प्रॉब्लम को एड्रेस करता है और उसके बताता है कि ये प्रॉब्लम क्या चीज है और उसका समाधान क्या है। एक आम रीडर को इतना ही चाहिए कि आपके उस पॉलिसी पेपर में सारी चीजें लिखी हो जो कि उसके मन में आ रहा है,
जी,
जो उसको ट्रबल कर रहा है या जिसके बारे में वो जानना चाहता है, उसको कहीं मिल नहीं रहा है। आपका दो चार पेजेस का या 5 पेजेस का जो पॉलिसी डॉक्यूमेंट है, वो उसको वो चीज सोल्यूशन बता रहा है।
true,
तो
sir.
यू आर ए सोल्यूशन प्रोवाइडर, यू आर नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम क्रिएटर।
True, sir.
दैट इज हाउ इट इज।
So, sir, when we talk about the today's employers and what they actually want, because a lot of students, what they tell is that they face a lot of difficulty. They struggle a lot when identifying and struggling with the understanding of the mindset of these employers. And so, from your experience, what are the most important skills you think that government departments, think tanks, consulting firm, and international organizations look for while hiring for policy professionals?
Once you appear in the interview, then there are a few people sitting across you. They ask you a few questions. If you are intelligent
Yes,
enough,
yes, sir.
you will understand whether they are taking your interview to employ you or not to employ you. There are only two ways. If they do
That's
not want to employ you, then their questioning line of questioning will be different. If they are interested in employing you, but that will depend on who you are. What kind of replies are you giving? What kind of replies are you giving to people? So this is a very critical thing. So understanding the mind of the employer is very critical. You can understand the mind of the employer only after you are employed. So I will talk from the perspective of those who are already employed. Now, once you are employed in either in the government sector or in the corporate sector, You spend some time understanding the boss
True.
and the system. You cannot carry your baggage to any company or to
True,
the
sir.
government. You'll fail. So you need to understand what is expected of you. You also need to understand the environment, whether that environment permits you to operate in a manner that you feel is okay. So without making unjustifiable decisions, judgments, without making it apparent to the people that you are actually judging them, be very calm, carry out your work, be efficient. If somebody is after your life, you'll understand. If the boss is supportive of you, you'll understand. If somebody is against you, you'll understand. So there's a lot of psychology involved when you are employed by somebody. In the government also, you have different people under which whom you will be working throughout your tenure. I worked with so many people, worked under so many people. Every boss had a different flavor, different style of approaching a particular subject. I mold myself. आपको बड़ी फ्लेक्सिबल होना पड़ेगा.
जी सर.
आप यदि फ्लेक्सिबल नहीं है ना, आप तब आप कहीं काम नहीं कर पाएंगे. आप कहीं पर भी कुछ अलाइन नहीं कर पाएंगे. आपको देखना पड़ेगा कि अच्छा ठीक है, हमने एक आदमी के साथ साल भर काम किया, वो बॉस बदल गया, दूसरा आदमी आ गया, अब इसकी क्या अप्रोच है. तो आप ऑलवेज कंपेयर करते हो कि अप्रोच उनकी अलग थी, इनकी अलग है. कई बार होता है कि पिछले वाला बॉस बहुत बुरा था, अगले वाला बॉस बहुत अच्छा है. यू आर
जी.
हैप्पी, बट उसको यू कांट टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड. हैप्पी है ठीक है, बट अच्छा बॉस आ गया तो ऐसा थोड़ी है कि हम उसके साथ जो इच्छा सो कर सकते हैं. यदि पहले वाला बॉस बहुत अच्छा था और बाद वाला बॉस बहुत खराब है, now again you have to change your style of working. बेटा
जी.
अंडरस्टैंड कि उसको चाहिए क्या. एक बुरे आदमी को भी तो कुछ चाहिए होता है ना आपसे.
That's true.
तो वो अपनी तरीके से कुछ कराता है, तो बेस्ट ये है कि उसको ज्यादा अपोज न करते हुए अपना काम करें. आप कोई सोशल रिफॉर्म्स के लिए थोड़ी बैठे हैं सरकार में या कॉर्पोरेट.
True.
आपको अपनी नौकरी करनी है ना. अब आप उसको बॉस बोला नहीं सर वो तो आपके प्रेडिसेसर ऐसा बोला, अच्छा बोला ठीक है तुम जाओ उनके साथ काम करो जिस दूसरी कंपनी में चले गए, है ना. तो
जी सर.
बात यह है कि कोई भी चीज हो वहां पे आपकी अलाइनमेंट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है.
True.
और पॉलिसी पेपर्स भी एक अलाइनमेंट के तहत ही चलती है. दे ऑलवेज अलाइन विद द सोशल कॉजेज, सोशल इश्यूज, responsibilities. So there is always that alignment which takes place. That is how I
जी.
look at it.
No, sir, one very, I guess, I want to ask this question with you. So, as you mentioned that, about the alignment and the different bosses, like, with whom a person work for. So, sir, the same thing also happens in the bureaucracy as well when we talk about, when also students also study about it, that bureaucrats are permanent and the the executives are not permanent in nature. But whenever the change of government happens or the executive changes, so they have to work with them in the alignment. So, how easy or difficult it is, sir, at times?
So for people like us, we worked under a different system till 2014. After 2014, the new government came, the approaches changed. So you have to again align yourself with the leadership. Aligning with the leadership is an art. If you do not align yourself with the leadership, current leadership, then you have fallen behind. You are of no use to the company or to the government. If you continue to work like the people who are actually policy formulators,
Yes, sir.
they were policy formulators in the pre 2014 era.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
post 2014 is a different aspect altogether. So, what are you doing? You're responding. You're changing your
True.
style. You're changing your style of talking, writing, public dealing, mentoring. Policy formulations are different, approaches are different. How quickly you get used to it?
Yes, sir.
Because you have no other way.
True.
You cannot have a different way from the government or even in the corporate sector. Somebody
True.
else was a CEO sometime. New CEO comes, start changing everything. What do?
True.
You have to align yourself. You must give, you can't help it. So you have to go along with it. If you find that it is impossible to work, you resign. But government, nobody resigns because it's a
Nobody
secure
resigns.
job.
True.
So in private sector, people resign, the people keep changing their companies, etc., and all that. So
Yes, sir.
alignment is very critical. Alignment either way is very important. In our respective homes, also we align with people, with
True.
our families, with our brothers, sisters, parents. There's always an alignment. Managing this, managing that, that emotion, this emotion, wo problem, ye problem. So you are continuously aligning yourself.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow your father's mood is bad, so you have aligned yourself with that. नहीं नहीं इस समय मूड खराब है, इसमें ज्यादा कुछ बोलना नहीं है. मम्मी का मूड खराब है तो अलाइन कर रहे हैं अपने आप को. वो भी तो लीडर्स है, वो कॉर्पोरेट लीडर्स है, सॉर्ट ऑफ पुट देम थ्रू
True.
दैट सिचुएशन. तो जब यदि हम इनफ्लेक्सिबल होंगे तो हम रोज लड़ते रहेंगे.
True.
और आपने बॉस से लड़ नहीं सकते, आप बॉस के ऊपर कुछ बोल नहीं सकते. वो कहेंगे अच्छा तुम भी सब जानते हो सकता है बॉस को कुछ भी पता नहीं हो. At times you may know a lot better than your boss, but कभी वो बताना नहीं है कि आपसे हमको ज्यादा नॉलेज है. वो खतरा है. सो
That's
इसलिए हर चीज प्रेस्क्रिप्टिव नहीं होती है. एकदम पब्लिक पॉलिसी जो है वो आप इसलिए नहीं बताते हो कि यू डू फिंगर पॉइंटिंग. यार देखो तुम कुछ भी नहीं हो, बेकार हो तुम हर चीज गंदा रखते हो. तुम्हारे लिए हमने स्वच्छता भारत अभियान चालू कर दिया.
yes, sir.
ये पॉलिसी.
Is it like the same thing which happens at home?
हाँ हाँ.
Like aligning with our partners or
एब्सोल्युटली 100%. First of all, that's why the best place of teaching is your home. So policy making and policy formulation, not writing, starts from home. As I said at the outset of my lecture, if you are able to manage things there, if you follow a policy, at times you have to follow a policy by force.
True, sir.
पापा ने कहा कि नहीं मिलना है उससे, जाना नहीं है. मम्मी ने कहा कि निकलना नहीं है. पॉलिसी है ना, गाइडलाइंस है, नहीं
True.
निकलना है. 6 बजे तक वापस आ जाना है घर. पॉलिसी गाइडलाइंस है, पालन करना पड़ेगा. नहीं तो फिर गाली सुननी पड़ेगी, डांट सुननी पड़ेगी. तो घर से निकाल नहीं दिया जाएगा, लेकिन कम से कम इतना तो होगा कि आपको कोई डांट फटकार पड़ सकती है इफ यू स्टार्ट वायलेटिंग दोज थिंग्स कॉन्शियसली. तो
True, sir.
इसीलिए हम लोग सबसे पहले पॉलिसी घर पे सीखते हैं. उससे बढ़िया कोई टीचर नहीं है हमारे लिए. यदि हम अपनी पॉलिसी सही बनाएं, एक हार्मनी के साथ बनाएं, तो घर अच्छा चलता है. यदि हम उसको लादने की कोशिश करें किसी को, फिर घर अच्छा नहीं चलता. बिकॉज हो सकता है कि थोड़ी देर के लिए वो डर के मारे चुप हो जाए, पर जिस दिन उसको बोलने की क्षमता होगी वो उससे निकल आएगा बाहर.
That's true, sir.
तो ऐसी पॉलिसी पेपर का या गाइडलाइंस का फायदा क्या है कि जो कि कल को वायलेट हो जाए, बिकॉज इट इज नॉट हारमोनियस. और
True.
हम लोग कई बार हारमोनी हारमोनी नहीं रख पाते पॉलिसी पेपर्स के साथ.
True, sir.
हम लोग उसको सारे लोगों को एक ही उसमें जनरलाइज कर देते हैं. एक समाज में कई तरह के लोग रहते हैं, तो
True, sir.
हमारे को सबकी मानसिकता को ध्यान में रखते हुए पॉलिसी बनानी चाहिए. That's how I look at it.
So, sir, what advice would you like to give to our uh, d- uh, younger generation? Because we India have its largest and biggest demographic dividend. So, what advice would you give to our younger generation who are specifically looking forward to go in or looking forward to step into the space of public policy? And if you had to name 3 or 4 skills that every aspiring policy professional should master, what would they be?
First of all, you should be a good watcher. You watch your surrounding. What is there? What is to be done? What is to be implemented? That will be possible only when you do some research on your immediate surrounding. Number one. You must analyze clearly the information which is there for you. Analyze the situation, information which is available to you. Pick up the right information for use, for implementation, for inclusion in public policy documents. Be very precise with your writing. Your writing has to be clear and persuasive. You should be able to interpret various data and statistics, understand what is going around there. When you are watching, you are understanding, you are realizing. Then you must learn the art of communication. That is where I feel that a lot of people lack because they don't communicate effectively. You must communicate effectively. You must reach out to people. You must understand. You must listen very carefully. You can make a good policy paper only also by listening to somebody. Because when you listen, you understand.
Yes, sir.
And when you understand, that is not possible without your thinking critically. And critical thinking is always aimed at problem solving. Whatever you are doing in life, you are essentially guided by the thought of solving somebody's problem.
True.
In fact, when you make a good policy paper, you solve your own problems as well, because you are very aware of the problem that you are facing.
That's true, sir.
Stay informed. It is always good to carry information, to gather information, the right information which doesn't misguide you. And you must gain practical exposure, learn some methods, learn examples, look at examples. And that is where all these things, they align with government departments. If you are posted there, if you are working in a think tank, all these attributes become important. When you are working in a research institution, all these things which I have mentioned, they become important. When you are working in the NGOs or international organizations for that matter, with the ministry and all that, fine. Suppose you are working in the United Nations, then your thinking has to be coherent. Suppose you are asked to make a policy paper for United Nations, UNDP, suppose, or UNESCO. You just imagine the framework of compiling a research paper, or not a research paper, policy paper for UNESCO or for UNDP. Now, look at the kind of work they are doing. What kind of policy paper they are looking from you? It has to be coherent, it has to be harmonious, it has to be beneficial, it has to have a problem identification content. Then you always analyze what is the cost, benefit, what is
Yeah.
the loss, what kind of an impact it is making in anybody's life. Suppose it's a UNESCO project, so it's a child education and all that, children education. It is making an impact. So your policy paper will make an impact.
Yes,
That
sir.
is possible when you continuously monitor and evaluate things,
True.
situations. I think these are very critical aspects of our work.
Yes, absolutely, sir. So, also, sir, when we talk about the gaps, so when young professionals enter into the space of public policy ecosystem, so what are the most common gaps that you notice?
See, when you talk about gaps, then you are unable to appreciate a situation which is around you. When you start writing a policy paper without understanding what is required to be written there, what are the points therein, what is the situation around you, what exactly are you writing on? A lot of people, they do not know what are they writing. So the comprehension, the language, analysis, whatever I've just said, if you just overturn it, that there is less information, there is less analysis, there is more assumption, there is very inflexible policy writing. If you want to that policy to be thrust on somebody, then it's a bad policy. You cannot use force, or you cannot compel somebody to follow a policy guideline. You have to be harmonious. You have to make somebody understand why a policy brief is important. Because you always follow a particular guideline, but guidelines can't be punishing kind of thing. They have to be advisory in nature. You are advising somebody. It's good that whichever system you are working on, you have to be harmonious with the system. So at times the policy writers, they try to be overbearing. They try to write something which they do not themselves follow in their own lives. That is where the problem comes in, that you are writing something which you are not following yourself. So you should write something which is simple, understandable,
Yeah.
clearly, which can be followed. So gaps come in only due to these reasons, that you are unable to understand what you are writing on, and you are in your own fantasy world.
Yes, sir.
You just write something, that I've written this, now you follow it. No, it doesn't happen. You will not follow it. First of all, you will
Ji,
not understand it. Following it comes later.
ji, sir. So, sir, would you also say that the gap is more about theoretical knowledge, or is it a lack of practical skills like policy writing, analytical thinking, communication, stakeholder engagement, and problem solving?
See, first of all, the main problem is the understanding. You actually do not know what you are going to write there. So, not very good policy writers, they end up being prescriptive. They always tell you what to do, they always tell you what you should not, but they never give you the middle path.
True, sir.
A policy paper must give you options. Any policy paper which does not give you options is a bad policy paper. It's not a rule of a law. You're not kind of hitting somebody with a stick. Look, this is the policy, you better follow. If you don't follow, I'll beat you or I'll punish you. So at times we don't understand and we are not sensitive at times. When you write a policy paper, you have to be sensitive. You have to be compassionate. You have to be careful. You have to be having an insight into the lives of people for whom it is important to follow a particular policy. So same thing goes with foreign policy also. I mean, if we just say no, well, this country has said something about Kashmir, you beat that country up. It doesn't happen like that. It's not, policy papers are not very black and white stuff. They are always, they always follow the middle path. So we have to be flexible when we are penning a foreign public policy, and we have to see how far it is going to be accepted by the people for whom the paper is being written.
Ji.
It's very important.
So, sir, now slowly shifting from the gap side to the practical learning side. So, as we see that many universities these days provide a strong theoretical understanding of governance and public policy. However, when we talk about students, so they often tell us that they have limited opportunities to actually draft a policy brief or even analyze real policy problems or engage with stakeholders. So, how important is practical learning in preparing someone for a successful career in public policy?
The most important factor is practical learning. Most important factor is practical learning. Every policy paper will have to be put into practice.
Yes, sir.
So if it is not practical in nature, where is the practicability of that? Implementation is nothing but practicability. There is nothing which is implemented which is theoretical. Even if it is theoretical to some extent, it has to be put into practice, and then the policy paper will reflect the practical part of implementation. I can't say ki in this country this is followed, or our forefathers have said this. We have to see whether we have to see. So the implementation part is practical part. And if some policy document is not very well implementable,
Ji, sir.
it means that it is based more on theory than on
Ji.
practice. That is wrong. Any policy document is a failure or is not adequate if it is only based on theory.
So that is, I guess, from where the term has also come policy in practice.
Yeah. If a policy can't be put into practice, it is no policy. Now, why do you make policy? You make a policy to implement it.
Obviously.
Implementation is practice.
Yes, sir.
If you only give a lecture on policy and not to be implemented, then it is no policy. If a policy is not implemented, it's a failure.
Yeah.
So the practicability of a policy is critical. It's the most vital aspect of it. And the people who write a good policy paper, they are very good at telling the people how this paper is going to be implemented.
Ji.
The writing, the concept, the analysis, the comprehension, they will tell you that. They will also give you hints, examples that this is to be implemented like this. You make it very simple for those people who are going to follow it. Nobody will follow. If you give a very long lecture at home about life and then you tell your children that, you have to do this, children will not even understand what you have said.
True,
How
sir.
will they implement it? Then you
True.
say, I'll beat you with a stick. That's a bad policy implementation.
Ji.
So policy, it's a lot of persuasion is involved. Smart persuasion. You have to identify with the reader. If you do not, there are many policy papers which do not identify with the reader. They are written in vacuum.
Ji.
Any policy paper written in vacuum is a failure because you
Yeah.
have not identified your audience.
True.
What is the advantage of a policy paper? It is not, there is no audience. And if you are talking about an audience which does not identify your with your policy, then it's either a
So
confusion.
that is also a today, like, issue of today's time, that whenever I also come in touch and interact with a lot of students, so rather than focusing upon the second, quantitative research, qualitative research, they focus on the quantitative research aspect of it, sir. So that is
Hmm.
what I feel, is that also becoming a serious concern when we talk about
Mhm.
these people who are aspiring to come into the space of public policy,
Yeah.
because research cannot be, as you rightly mentioned, that it cannot be done in vacuum or silos.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that practical implementation, and that that you have a proper universe size where you should have people to interact with and get to know their problem, is very much important. In today's time, there are very few chunk of people who are who are very much invested and interested to go on the ground, but the majority of people, like 60% of it, are still not on that level, sir.
See, anybody who is writing a policy paper is not an expert on policy paper automatically. You are not an expert. You are just writing something. But policy writing is something which is an art, which is a very important part of knowledge.
True.
And it takes a very holistic view of the society, of the readers, of the audience. It can't be written in isolation.
Yeah.
So those people who don't have the comprehension of taking the entire a holistic view of their audience,
Yes, sir.
they are unable to write a good policy paper. So I think we have to keep it very simple. We have to keep it very focused. We have to understand that this policy paper of mine will be read and understood, and only then it can be implemented.
Yes, sir.
So I think these are very simple things, and we don't do simple things the simple way. We always do simple things the hard way. That's why jargon comes in. That's why difficult English comes in. That is why a lot of high flying language comes in. It's of no use. Nobody is bothered about how much English you know. They would like to see whether what you have written on the paper, in the policy paper, is it okay? Does it make sense to me? Am I
True.
identifying with that? I'm okay with that? Or you are punishing me that if I don't follow it. That's not a good approach. So you have to
True,
be
sir.
persuasive.
So would you also what would you suggest to someone who has already worked on the policy briefs, simulations, and real world policy projects, having an advantage during recruitments?
Yes. Somebody who has got very practical knowledge of public policy is a clear thinker. You have to be a clear thinker. So clear thinker will always pick up people who are clear thinkers themselves.
Yes,
Even
sir.
if you're appearing for an interview, but your mind is clear, a good recruiter will understand that you have some serious mettle to be part of a system, organization. Tomorrow your skills might be used for writing a policy paper, public policy paper. So these attributes are understood by good negotiators, by good recruiters, and a lot of children, a lot of candidates have that approach when they talk to them. Then they ask some leading questions, which will actually clarify to the interviewers that yes, this candidate has a lot of potential. So you recruit, you work on that candidate, bring him up or her up, and then you have a very sound professional in that area.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So that's the actual, actually, the That is the actual gap the policy tank has been trying to address. And through our programs, students don't just study policy; they're also actively working on those policy research, policy writing, stakeholder mapping, policy analysis, evidence-based decision making, negotiations, simulations, and communication. So, from your perspective, how relevant are these practical skills in today's time, in today's policy ecosystem? And do these competencies genuinely prepare young professionals for career in government or in think tanks or consulting or
These are
in
some of the
international
most
organizations?
these are some of the most critical attributes what you've just listed.
Yes, sir.
We need to have those attributes to be a successful and good professional. If we do not have these attributes, then our progression will be limited. And the system will not take us seriously. See, there are a lot of people who are recruited, but very few people shine. Why some people shine? Because they are different, not because they want to be different, but they are different because of these attributes. So you look at this spark, is what I said at the time interview, you look at this spark of an individual, that he or she can do a couple of things which others can't. So when somebody comes into the organization will also look at maximizing the benefits from that person's talent.
Yes, sir.
So you work within that system, and every company, every corporate sector company, or every government would like to have some bright people
Yes, sir.
on board.
No,
It is
sir,
only a
if you,
normal expectation.
yeah. No, sir, if you were designing a policy training program today, so what practical components would you definitely include to make graduates industry ready?
See, you have to be sensitive to your surrounding, number one. You have to be clear in your thoughts, number two. Number three, you have to analyze information very carefully. Number four, you have to segregate information very carefully. You don't have to kind of believe everything what you read and see. You have to be very careful in your writing. You have to be very thoughtful in your approach of public policy writing. You have to understand why are you writing this policy document? For whom? How do you tailor it? How do you make it comfortable for people to follow? You or don't think that you are doing a massive social reforms work, but you are making yourself understood. When you are making yourself understood, you are making the organization that you are working with understood to people. You make an objective understood to the audience. You also tell them that this is a good approach. One should do it. So you are being persuasive. It will make an impact. You have to create an impact. Now, when you create an impact, you don't force that impact on somebody. You cajole, you persuade, you try to impress upon people in a very diplomatic manner. You always tell people that, why I think it is important. No, that is not the approach. It's a good policy. And this is a good policy approach because of these reasons, because it is important for us. So always, if you lecture somebody about why they should follow and why they have been making mistake of not following it, then they will not like it.
Yes, sir.
So I think you have to be very clear about the process of writing a policy.
So, sir, talking about the future opportunities and looking ahead, where do you see that the biggest opportunity for young policy professionals over the next 5 years to 10 years is lying? Whether is it in AI governance or climate policy, education, digital governance, cybersecurity, public health, or in international development?
See, everybody can't be a policy writer.
Yes, sir.
For being a policy writer, you have to have some attributes, as I said, as we have discussed. So you are writing a policy paper by virtue of your work somewhere.
True.
If you are working with a think tank, you are expected to write a policy paper exclusively.
True.
If you are expected to write a research paper exclusively.
True.
If you are hired by an organization to assist in the policy making domain, you are supposed to write that, but then you are handpicked, selected to be working in that domain because you possess some qualities
Yes,
If
sir.
the leadership does not see those qualities in you, they will never put you into that domain. They can put you somewhere else. They will put you in sales. They will send you marketing. They will send you cyber. But
Ji.
for a policy writer, public policy writer, he has to or she will have to have a certain bend of mind, which is visible. So, you, any case, public policy or policy writing is an art.
Yes,
Either way,
sir.
one should learn it. It will be utilized somewhere. Company tomorrow will isolate, well, these out of these 50 people, there are 5 people who
Yes,
are
sir.
very good writers, thinkers. There's a clarity of thought.
True.
So you are segregated.
Hmm.
Tomorrow, if the company or the government wants to prepare a policy, then they will put that team in place. Well, these are 5, 10 people. Let us make a team. Let this team work on these projects. You are given ideas, you start working. You can't expect 50 or other 50 or 100 people to be like that. So you
True.
automatically you become different from them, and you start specializing on these issues apart from the work that you're doing in any setup. So I think the good leaders will always identify good policy writers.
Ji. Sir, one advice finally. So, like, if you were speaking directly to the thousands of students and young professionals watching this podcast or this our conversation today, so who aspire to build a career in public policy, so what that advice would you give them?
First of all, they should ask whether they want to pursue the career of public policy
Ji.
and why. You must ask yourself. At times, it's good to have a conversation with yourself. Unless you actually have a conversation with yourself, you can never succeed. Not everybody is made for everything. So you must assess yourself whether you are a good policy writer at all or not. You don't have to always depend on somebody else's assessment. You can do some research, look at some serious policy papers, understand how people write. That will give you an example of how well or how badly you write, how clear you are in your thinking. So it's a very conscious decision to start writing something like that. We have drafted policy papers. When we draft policy papers, we go into all the aspects of that policy guidelines. We also try to understand for whom we are drafting it, why are we drafting it, how is this draft going to be useful for anybody, how this draft is going to be understood by somebody, how beneficial is this particular paper to the organization and to the society at large. So I think it's a very conscious decision. But at the end of policy writing skills, your approach to work, approach to writing, approach to comprehension, this is also very important. You cannot write a good policy paper unless you have these attributes. So if you are all of them, so the message to the young generation and to the students and professionals is that if you feel that public policy is something which you can handle, policy writing, then you must go for it. But then you should check, you should read a lot before you take a decision. So I think it's very clear to us that everybody can't be a policy writer. One should not be converted into, can't be converted into a brilliant policy writer in one night. No.
Yes, sir.
There are a lot of things which are a continuation. So your traits, your approaches, your qualities, they will translate into something serious tomorrow. But then you should be able to assess your own qualities. It's very important. Right? Are these qualities good enough for making you a good policy writer?
So, one final question, and before we call it off a session today. So, if someone is serious about building a career in public policy, would you recommend them building a career, like waiting them until they get their first job to develop these practical skills, or should they start building them through structured learning, mentorship, and real world exposure? And if yes, then why?
If you are waiting to get a job, then you will never succeed. You will actually get a job only when you have the qualities to get a job. You can't. It's not a magic wand that you enter a company or enter the government and suddenly one fine morning you become a brilliant policy writer. It just does not happen. If you really are serious about it, then you should do some serious research on this. You have to change your style of writing. You have to change the way you look at it, your thought process, your approaches. That's why it's very important for aspiring students, candidates to read a lot, to get hold of excellently written policy papers. Plenty of them are available on the internet. You just take out a few policy papers and see how they have designed it. The moment you start a policy paper, reading a policy paper by a good writer, you'll understand that he has actually started off in a manner which is very appealing and very simple. You address that issue directly without going in circles. If you go in circles, you have made a bad beginning. First para is the most critical part of any writing. First para, always remember. Nobody has the patience to read the fourth para unless the first para is good enough. If the first para is bad, then very few people will graduate to the second and the third paras. They're not interested. You should make your writing in a manner that it's like a story which is evolving, suspense. It's a storyline. Oh, wow. First para gives a particular signal. Let us get on to the second para to see how does it unfold. Second para will always give you some thoughts to lead up to the third para, and the process goes on, and suddenly you find that, well, you have reached the conclusion stage. You have not even realized how well it's written. And
Yes,
when you
sir.
say conclusion, then you would like to, after reading all that, being so impressed in, you would like to read the conclusion that this person has written something. What does he conclude, and how does he conclude? Because a lot of thought goes into conclusion. Body
Yes,
of
sir.
the document is one thing, but when you conclude, it's also an art. How do you conclude? So, entire gist of what you have written in the previous paragraphs is contained in the conclusion, and the conclusion, a good one, gives you an insight into the future.
True.
It gives you a solution which is workable. It just does not preach, it does not lecture. A conclusion never lectures, it doesn't preach.
Ji.
It is based on practicability, resolution, implementability. It just opens your eyes that, well, if you do this, this is what is going to be the outcome. So I think, a particular paper, whether it is policy paper or it is any paper, is contained of all these parts, well put together, well thought out, well researched, well explained, easily explained, nicely put, identifiable with your normal life, and provides you a guidance into the future.
Yes, sir. So thank you so much, and thank you once again for sharing your time and your experience and your valuable insights with us. Because today's conversation reinforces an important message. A successful career in public policy is built not only on academic knowledge, but also on practical skills, critical thinking, effective communication, and the ability to solve real world problems. At the Policy Tank, this belief is at the heart of everything what we do. Our programs are designed to help aspiring policy professionals gain hands on experience through policy research, policy writing, simulations, stakeholder engagement, and mentoring from practitioners so they are better prepared for opportunities in government, think tanks, consulting firms, and international organizations. And if this conversation has inspired you to explore a career in public policy or strengthen your skills, we invite you to learn more about our certification programs and become the part of the Policy Tank community. Thank you for joining us on Conversation with Diplomats and Bureaucrats. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again in the next episode.